It is not fun to be laughed at. People call you bald, say you suck, that you were an accident. Let's just leave it there. You certainly don't want this same nonsense when you're watching wrestling either, which is why, of course, it happens all the time. So I'm Simon from What Culture. Remember to never pee in the shower and subscribe. This is 10 times WWE mocked what we really wanted. Number 10, the Demon. I still do not get this. Why I wouldn't call myself the biggest fan of the Demon, as I think normal Finn Bálor is enough, I get it. When the world deals him a bad hand, he transforms into this creature and he kicks some ass. Sometimes. Whether or not Finn feels the same, I don't know, but after getting a bit sick of the main roster madness, he asked to and was transferred to NXT. When he was down there, he smashed it, reminded us all what a hero he could be, and then he returned to SmackDown. It seemed pretty good at first when he was pitched against Universal Champion Roman Reigns, and then we got to Extreme Rules 2021. Now, I don't think anyone thought Bálor was going to dethrone the Tribal Chief, but nobody called this, because just as Bálor had gone full demon, he climbed up the top rope, and then he fell off. For some reason, the ring just buckled, allowing Roman to get the win, and this was never followed up on or explained. It also made the character look like an absolute jabroni, underlining why Finn also asked to go to NXT UK after his first excursion. I think he knew. Number 9, the Summer of Bunk. There is a lot that you can pull apart from WWE in the summer of 2011. What we should have done is taken CM Punk and backed him to the moon, but we didn't. Instead, we kind of found ways to fight against this obvious increase in popularity. I don't know. One of the low points that rarely gets talked about, though, is his bizarre feud against The Miz and R-Truth. After taking the anti-company stance, as only Punk can, the story called for him to stand side by side with Mr. WWE or Triple H as they warred with Miz and Truth as they criticized the system. What was happening? As ever, it was just an attempt to try and quell the wave of support and was the complete opposite to what the fans wanted. Soon as we were done with Money in the Bank, CM should have been like Stone Cold Steve Austin as he raged against anything even remotely corporate. And it's not like he went full-on employee, but it was pretty obvious what was happening here. People often wonder why Punk eventually just left. Number 8, Sister Abigail. Well, this was fun, wasn't it? After years of fantasy booking who could possibly play Bray Wyatt's sister Abigail, WWE decided to pull the trigger, and it was really odd. Happening during a feud with Finn Bálor, somebody decided it was time to introduce Abby, and that the best possible option was Wyatt himself sat in his famous chair with a scarf over his head. I've still no idea what this was, and it happened all the way back in 2017. Even Life was aghast at this, as it intervened to ensure this didn't go anywhere, but honestly, if you have never witnessed this, go and watch to see if you get it, and it was just the worst possible choice. Names like Paige and Liv Morgan have been battered around for years, and even if you disagreed, at least it would be a vehicle for them to try and climb the ladder. Having Bray ramble on with a veil blinding his vision was just bizarre. And you know WWE agreed, as we never returned to this, and today, Wyatt isn't even employed by the company. My word. Number 7, the brand split part 1. We all know the 2001 invasion wasn't exactly the dream. For years, fans had wanted WCW versus the WWF, and while we did get it eventually, it flopped, and it was over in 6 months. If this had been done right, I'm pretty sure you could have kept it going for over a year. The powers that be knew there was something to this whole side versus side thing, though, so after World Championship Wrestling had officially gone, Vince McMahon's grand plan was the World Wrestling Federation versus the World Wrestling Federation. Now, on paper, this did make sense. Let's create our own war with the brand split, as red hates blue and blue hates red. There's certainly something to that, but as we know, this did not go to plan. It started well, but before long, wrestlers were jumping ship whenever they wanted. It was only at the Survivor Series when a proper idea of a big battle was put into the forefront, and these days it's just a marketing tool. I mean, Big E just returned to Friday nights because. That was the reason, because. So there was definitely potential here, and we did see it for a brief period. It just did not last long at all. Number 6, the brand split part 2. And in fact, all of it was so ridiculous, it's getting its own entry. For while the likes of Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels in 2006 benefited because WWE could use their show separation to add even more gravitas to the match, most of the time there was just no integrity. There was no rules, no consequences. You just get to November when all of a sudden one brand invaded the other. And sometimes that did work, don't get me wrong, but as soon as you got to December, it was back to the status quo as if nothing had gone down. I mean, talk about living week to week. It is a shame, as when used correctly, this was clearly the right move. We just never stuck to our guns, which was disappointing. And it's why today We should just go back to how it was before. Number 5, the John Cena heel turn. I do understand why WWE never did this. Just go and Google how much money good guy John Cena was making for the company, and it's not a huge surprise he was a cash-generating machine. So even when one side of the fan base was booing the shit out of him, the other was doubling down with their support and buying all his merchandise, and there's only one winner in that war. That doesn't mean that WWE didn't tease this, especially after WrestleMania 29, when his feud with The Rock had made Cena everything but a heel. And do you know what we got? A joke. John took his foot and wiggled the back part of it. You get the idea. And yes, it's hard to argue about why WWE did what they did, but given this is a list about mocking what fans really wanted, well, case in point. You didn't get villain Cena, what you got was lol funny. And really it was all okay because the man who can't be seen always brought the heat regardless, but oh, what could have been. It's never gonna happen now either. Cena has movie tickets to sell. Number 4, The Authority. All of this was like the tutorial of Far Cry Blood Dragon. A good game, yes, and one that broke the fourth wall right down to mocking the idea of all titles getting you to learn its controls, while it also put you through the exact same experience. So it was nice that this trope got acknowledged, but it also took no steps to offer an alternative. Say hello to The Authority. The whole reason this took up more screen time was to fight back against Daniel Bryan's incredible rise to the top, with the idea being that eventually they would be toppled and Bryan would be the man. Now, Daniel did make it there, but it was not because of this group. In fact, before long, they made it harder than they needed to. The whole story was also about WWE admitting that it had faults and that it should listen to the fans, but nothing ever changed. Even after the McMahons and Triple H literally walked out in front of a crowd and said all this, it still didn't change. Really, this should have been the catalyst for a whole new era, and yet months after the fact, it was the same old, same old. And this wasn't all bad, there were some good moments, but it did act as a last straw for a lot of fans. They were done. Number 3, The Big Show does the yes chant. Do you remember this in 2013? It was surreal. But for some reason, Vince McMahon decided that Daniel Bryan wasn't over, and what was popular was the yes chant. Why that even matters, I don't know, but hey, WWE. To try and prove this though, the act of taking your finger and throwing it in the air was given to the Big Show. The powers that be truly thought this would be enough for the crowd to switch their allegiance and support the larger man, and guess what? It didn't work. It's another of these occasions where you see the cracks in WWE's insistence that the plan was to always push Bryan, and it's baffling really. Even if you were right, it's Daniel who has manifested it. Stick with him. We know what the deal is here, however, he wasn't one of their guys, so we must do whatever we can to change it. Thank goodness this time it backfired. Number 2, Rusev Day. This one hurt, my friends. This one hurt a lot. It is basically the same thing that we just got into, but after Rusev started claiming that every single day was Rusev Day and turning it into an absolute joy, Vinnie Mac was back with his version of the truth. This wasn't the crowd backing the Bulgarian brute, they were mocking him with Somebody Give Me Strength. The now Miro spoke about this on many a podcast, and look, I'm a fan, and I can tell you firsthand I was shouting this because Rusev is great and I wanted him to succeed. But I may as well have yelled at a brick wall as it didn't help the man. It was actually used against him. I mean, what are you meant to do? Thankfully, he has now found his place in AEW, and surprise, surprise, he's excellent. Who the flub knew? Number 1, nearly every NXT call-up. You already know the deal with this. For some reason, we would make someone awesome in NXT, find them a cool character to the point they were over, before bringing them to the main roster, hitting reset, and then we never saw them again. What a wonderful plan. This happened with so many guys, from Bayley to Finn Bálor to Ricochet to EC3 to Bobby Roode to Karrion Kross to Keith Lee to Aleister Black, and well, really, we could do this all day. Oddly, it ties into another entry in this video, namely the treatment of WCW. One of Vince McMahon's big problems there was that he didn't create these guys, so screw them, and even though he was supporting NXT financially, they got the same rule. He had to try and change them up, even though half the fun was seeing how wrestlers we'd invested in would actually succeed when they got to the main roster. I'm not sure anybody wanted a total 180, and what was the point of the third brand to begin with? It's all gone nuts now, as we know, a really baffling decision all around. And just to make it even more crazy, somebody asked Slipknot frontman Corey Taylor about this, and even he agreed he didn't think it was a good idea either. What reality are we living in? Know of any other times WWE mocked what we really wanted? Make sure you let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Then head over to whatculture.com where you can read articles like this and stay up to date with the latest wrestling news. Come and watch another video because it will make you feel good, and we're on social media. Come and say hi, and if you look nice, we'll say hi back. My name is Simon from What Culture. It's been a pleasure serving you with information today, and I look forward to doing it again tomorrow.